everybody. You're listening to Comic Book Bears Podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. And we are thrilled to have a special guest with us on the show tonight. For the first time, we have Sean McArdle with us. Sean is a writer, artist, and college professor based in Canton, Ohio. Over the past 10 years, he's worked for a diverse array of publishers, including Image, Arcana, and IDW. He juggles his time between being a comic creator, a commercial and video music director. He's full-time in-house multimedia director at a manufacturing company and is also an adjunct professor at Kent State University. He's here to talk about his project, The Führer And The Tramp. We'll have him provide his elevator pitch regarding it. But to cut to the chase, it's an alternative history graphic novel published by Source Point Press, which tells the story of Charlie Chaplin fighting Adolf Hitler and the Nazis while filming his 1940 film. I almost said "The Great Disaster." I'm so used to commanding. Great Dictator. Jesus Christ. Well, though I blew your intro, I hope you're happy to join us here, Sean.
Thanks for having me on, Bill.
Our pleasure. I'm going to assume that your given age be too far removed from being a child of the 80s. And what we do on this show is we're basically like Loverboy, and we start from the start. So the first question we always have for people is, how did you first get into comic books?
My bribery from my mom.
Oh, cool.
So I vividly remember it. I was pre-kindergarten, and I don't know what I did right, or but my mom gave me one of those. Remember, you used to get like the 3 packs of comics
yes.
with 3 issues.
Yes.
And I remember vividly. It was an issue of Batman. It was an issue of Action Comics, and it was an issue of Captain America. And She didn't give me the whole pack. What she did was she just gave me one. So the first one I got was Action Comics, and then she hid the other ones up in her closet. But unknown to her, I knew where those were, and so I was always getting them and reading them and stuff. And eventually, I was a good enough boy that I got the other 2, and that's where it started. So, and you have to remember, if this was like 79, 80. So Superman the movie was just coming out, and I remember vividly like cutting it out of the newspaper and gluing it into like a sketchbook, the ads for the movie, and my dad taking me to see Superman 2. I was trying to figure out which did I see first. Was it Empire or Superman 2 at the theater? And it was the very first movie I think I ever saw in the theater was Empire Strikes Back. But I just remember sitting there waiting to see Darth Vader the entire time, and whispering to my babysitter when Darth Vader was going to be on the screen. Superman, though, I remember the entire movie, because then I would just repeat it ad nauseum to everybody that I would meet. I would tell them the entire story of Superman 2. I was like, wow, he has new powers. He can rip his ass off and throw it at people. That's amazing. Because I was 4.
Okay, in regards to
that shit.
and in regards to being a comic creator, how did you get involved in the medium then?
Well, I started immediately folding pieces of paper. I have a bunch of these old comics, folding them together and making my own characters and stuff. And they had dumb names like Laser Light and Electron. I don't know, just a bunch of sciencey names that I thought sounded cool at 10. So, and they all drove like Lamborghinis, of course. So I have all these dumb comics like that, and eventually, like I think around it really kind of peaked like right around 5th and 6th grade. I started to have my own allowance, and I could go out and actually buy comics. And every summer I was doing all kinds of goofy jobs, making money. And that's what I would do is I would use that to buy comics. And I remember getting my dad to drive me to the only comic book store around. It literally was. We were lucky enough in Canton to have like an exclusive comic book shop. And so I get him to drive me all the way into the downtown to go get go pick up some books. So I'd have like $20, and I bought like all 4 of the Wolverine minis, the Frank Miller mini. And at that time, I remember even going in there one time, and it was like I could have bought the first issue of Dark Knight Returns. But remember, I'm like 10 at this time, or 9 or 10. Dark Knight Returns, like, you got the first issue of that, it was like $4 or whatever. Or I could have got all 4 issues of Ambush Bug. So of course I went with Ambush Bug. I regret nothing. But then, you know, like, it really, throughout my high school career, I was making comics, and that's what I wanted to do. And I went to Kent State University for art, and was doing painting. So I'm doing painting, like trying to do Alex Ross-ish kind of. Ross, is that a word? Ross, like Alex Ross-esque. Okay, how about that? Alex Ross-esque kind of paintings and stuff. So this is around 95, whenever, you know, Marvels was just peaking. And not very good, though. They were nowhere near good. But, you know, I was trying to do that. My professors they're all abstract painters, you know. So anything that was figurative, they looked down on. And finally, one day, my professor was like, "This isn't painting. This is illustration." I was like, "Thank you. What is illustration? Is there some difference? You know, is that a different class I could take? I'd rather take that because I don't want to paint, like, you know, splatters on the canvas." But, you know, so eventually I got into illustration. And I'm drawing comic books. And my professor's like, "What is this? Comic books? You don't draw comic books in this class." So we're looking at Norman Rockwell and Maxwell Parrish, and you know, these great illustrators I still love. But, you know, that was the bend. That was where the trajectory was. You know, doing magazine covers and doing you know, Rolling Stone had a bunch of painted illustrations and stuff inside it, and all magazines did. And then, like, photography really took off in like the late 90s, and so my portfolio was going that direction. And then I started talking to, like, actual, you know, illustrators that lived in Ohio. One was in Cincinnati, Christopher Payne. I drove 4 hours down to spend the day with him. Spent the whole day with him, watching him paint. It was amazing, but the whole time all he said is like, "Yeah, I don't have any work anymore. You should do something else. Do graphic design, because illustration's dead. Everything's photography now." And he was right. So I'm like, "God damn it. I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing?" So I ended up doing graphic design for like the next 20 years of my life. And then I'm like turning 40, and, you know, I'm 38 years old. I'm turning 40. I've been playing around in comics, doing stuff, but it's like, God damn it, I just want something that's mine. I just want to make that comic book I wanted to make whenever I was, you know, 10, you know. And that was Führer and the Tramp. You know, I started looking for a bunch of different things that I could do. At this point, I had been like doing like one issue and doing a synopsis and then send that around to publishers, and either getting rejected or worse, not hearing a damn thing. And that's the worst thing, is not hearing anything. Because you don't know, is it just sitting in a slush pile or thrown away? And, you know, did they even look at it? Or was it so bad they didn't want to send me a rejection? So getting nothing. Because I even had, addressed envelopes in there with stamps on it so they could easily send me a rejection letter. They didn't even do that. So that was really discouraging. And so finally I decided, you know, I'm just going to finish the damn thing. All that I want to do this for me. I'm making a book for me, not for printers, not for publishers, not for anybody else other than myself. And this is the book I made. And I decided just to change my view on what I thought success was. So it wasn't being published. It wasn't about getting nominated for Eisners or getting a job at Marvel. The whole barometer of success for me was to finish this thing and hold it in my hands and sit there and read it and put it on my bookshelf and look at it and have this thing that I finished, that I made this thing that I care about, that I like, and I made for an audience of one, myself. And that's what I did. And getting that book the first day, open up that box, point out that book that and holding in my hands, it's the birth of my 2 daughters, and then that. So
okay, well, you have it as your backdrop there, And again, congratulations on the webcomic nomination for an Eisner. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And it's a really interesting trajectory that you had from webcomic to something physical to now a collected edition. But you are here to promote the collected edition. So in terms of an elevator pitch, Reader's Digest version about the Führer and the Tramp, why don't you provide to us what the story's about, since it's from
it's about
the burning bush here.
Yeah, it's about Charlie Chaplin fighting Adolf Hitler. It's about Chaplin is trying to make the Great Dictator. If you've ever seen the movie The Great Dictator, it's a movie where he makes fun of Hitler, and Hitler's trying to sabotage the movie. So he ends up teaming up with two of FDR's secret agents, Hedy Lamarr and Errol Flynn. There's Hedy, and they help him finish the movie and punch a bunch of Nazis in the face. Like we should.
Okay, I have a tendency to Bogart interviews, so I'm going to take the baton and give it over to Steve. Steve, take over, and whatever you have for Sean, please go ahead and ask away.
Well, obviously, one of the great things that I love so much about being able to interview guest writers, artists, etc., people who are guest creators that come on the show is I get to read their work, and I absolutely love this. I think it's great. The character of Charlie Chaplin, because of course he's the center of this book, and just contrasting him with Hitler and contrasting him with the other main characters in the book, with Hedy and Errol and everybody he seems to encounter. Charlie is he is wild. I am a fan of old Hollywood through Karina Longworth.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Anything else?
Whoa, yeah.
So, you must remember this. I've listened to that whole podcast.
Such a great podcast.
Oh, it's wonderful, and I've learned so much from that. And I've gotten to appreciate a lot of these figures from the classic golden age of Hollywood. And Charlie Chaplin is one of those who's a very interesting person.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of things that make him kind of a problematic figure to some, but
certainly.
In this book, he's just a delight, and I really enjoy reading it. So, and you were talking about kind of like the process of getting into you wanted to create something, and this was what you were going to be creating. When you first started, was Charlie fleshed out in the same way that he ended up in the final product, or were you going to a different direction with him?
Not at all. So I like to start mine with every project I start, I try to start with like a little teaser, like a little prologue. I talk about it in on my website. I talk about like the way I break down a story. And really, I kind of developed that for this book. I was working on it, and I finally wrote it down for myself first to guide myself. But what I do is I think of it like as a James Bond movie. So you have James Bond. It starts with, you get everything that you need to know in 10 minutes. In the first 10 minutes, James Bond goes, he's banging a hot girl. He's skiing or doing something cool, and he's got gadgets, and he kills some bad guys, and he's on a secret mission. And but whenever you think that he's going to ski right off a cliff and die, then the Union Jack comes out, and dun dun dun, then the rest of the movie is just that. He's going to bang a hot girl. He's going to be doing cool stunts. He's going to drive cool cars. He's going to have gadgets, kill the bad guys, and dun dun dun. So that's how I want to write things. So I wanted tease the audience, let them know this is the story in microcosm, and if you like that, you'll like it in macrocosm. You'll like it. It's like the smaller version of the bigger story. So I wrote that first part first, where the first 12 pages, he has Chaplin shenanigans. He goes in and tries to go to a premiere for Leni Riefenstahl's Olympia, and ends up getting chased around the movie theater, and ends up at the end of it, he ends up making Hitler look like an idiot. So that if you like that, that's what the rest of the thing was going to be like. He's going to, you know, get involved in some shenanigans. I really like the, you know, a mousetrap kind of constructed storyline, like where this happens and that happens and this happens and that happens, which kind of fits Chaplin's kind of his physicality. So so if you like all that stuff and you like Hitler looking stupid, you'll like the rest of the book. So that's where it started. But then the more that I watched and rewatched and watched all of Chaplin's movies, and the more I read like his autobiographies and stuff, and listening to Karina's podcast and just absorbing all of this, and then also trying to find my own personal way in, because what I realize is that these characters, they're just pieces of me, you know. I'm not really tapping into them because I can't really know the true Charlie Chaplin, but it's a piece of me. And so I try to connect with that and try to realize, what is this piece of Chaplin that I'm connecting with? And one of the things I realized was, so in the whenever, it's interesting, it's in 1940, it's 1939, 1940s when they're shooting. So right whenever Hitler invades France, they're in production whenever that happens. And at the same time, you know, Chaplin's been doing, has been doing, his last two movies were silent pictures, even though silents are kind of dying. He's the only guy doing it anymore, even though Modern Times is kind of a mix of both. So he has to evolve and he has to change. Also, he was turning 50. So he's turning 50. His best friend, Douglas Fairbanks, died that same while they were in production. I couldn't find a way to fit that into the script. I really did want to get that in there. But he, so his best friend dies. He has to completely, basically give up the Tramp. He never does the Tramp again after Modern Times. And so he creates, the Tramp can never speak. So he has to create a whole new character. And this is the first time that Charlie's actually speaking on camera. So there's all of these things, all of these changes that he's going through. And here I was turning 40. I was really tired. I hated where I was working at the time. You know, I was kind of newly divorced, and you know, my life was in that kind of flux too. And then, you know, we don't have Hitler invading France, but we have, you know, our own dictator trying to take over America at the same time. And so like all of these things are just kind of feeding into me, so I can find my way into Charlie through those and find my connection from that. And then whenever I started writing Charlie, then it just became those other aspects of myself. And I found that with all the characters, that I would find those aspects of myself inside those characters. But then there's points where like the characters just started writing themselves, where like I read Errol Flynn's books so much and watched so many of his movies, kind of got an idea who this guy was, but I also knew who he was in my story. So there's like there's a part, there's a part with mimosas, and that was my favorite thing I ever wrote, because it's like, God damn it, I didn't even write that thing. It just wrote itself, and I'm laughing at it. You know, because like, where did this come from? I must have just found this somewhere, because I didn't write this. But it's like Errol was telling his own story. And then some of the things I found with Errol and ways to take the character that I had created of Errol, but also it's kind of like things that I would see, that I would intuit and try to see between the lines of things that he wrote, which may or may not be there. But I was absorbing it, and I find this insecurity within him, and that he's kind of braggadocious, but at the same time, you can see a little bit of insecurity between the lines. Or maybe I'm just making that up. But I decided to put that in there because it made him a more interesting character. And that path, and also with Hetty too, you know, whenever I originally chose these characters, I was going with a Luke, Leia, and Han. You know, I wanted that dynamic. So Errol's your Han, you know, he's your scoundrel. He's the cool guy. And you know, Charlie's just like kind of like the fuck up, you know, Luke's not really a fuck up, but you know, he's naive, and he's not, you know, as awesome as Errol or as awesome as Han, you know. But the really awesome one is Leia. She's the one that's like into the garbage chute, fly boys, you know, she's the one that's taking charge and saving their asses. And so that became Hetty. You know, she had that Leia forced her, which I also found in Ecstasy in Me, in her autobiography. You know, I found a lot of that about her in that she was kind of like a prototype of Leia. She really was. I don't think that Lucas was influenced by that at all, but she definitely was. She was this, and I think that's why she didn't have the career that she had, is because nobody knew what to do with her in 1940. You know, she was too awesome.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's something that it's funny that you should mention Hedy Lamarr, because she really is like the, you know, where Errol talks a big game about all of his swashbuckling exploits that may or may not be real.
Yeah.
And you know, they're probably real, but
they're probably real.
but you don't have to like constantly talk about how great they were and how amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
But Hetty has that kind of quiet strength that, you know, if she did let something drop, you know 100% that, yeah, that happened. And she's probably not telling you the whole story.
Right.
And I really did like her in, you know, in that dynamic of the three of them. It is very Princess Leia. And it's that sort of, I'm going to get this done. Mm-hmm. You two can just talk about your stuff. Like Charlie, you can go off and blab about what you were talking, you know, the whatever you're doing with the movies and whatever you're observing and like, you know, and then Errol can just kind of talk about how awesome he is. I'm just going to go over here, devise a plan and save our assets or figure out what to do. Like, I mean, that's kind of what I picture Hedy Lamarr to be. If Hedy Lamarr, you know, if we knew a lot more about some other things that maybe she did do, and we don't, you know, she did write about, it's possible. Like you could see Hetty, you know, somewhere as like some super spy, just sort of like, yeah, you know, there's a reason why I'm a nuclear physicist. Like,
yeah,
I actually did put the finishing touches in the Manhattan Project. Like that was me, you know. Yeah, I mean, just the characters are just so much fun to follow in this, and yeah, it's great. I always do get really interested to see how, you know, when you're starting out the outline, you kind of know as an author, as a creator, where you want this to go, but how those characters evolve and change from, you know, the original ideas, like I'm going to make, you know, person 1, 2, and 3, and they're going to be kind of like this, to the final product is just it's just a wonderful journey. To read as a reader.
It was a wonderful journey for me too, you know. Yeah. To discover these and to surprise myself whenever the characters do certain things. And it's some of the best moments. Maybe it's just to me, but to me it was some of the best moments in the book where the characters surprised me. But at the same time, it's not surprising because I look at it as like, no, that's exactly who that character is. That's exactly what they would do in this set of circumstances. You know, if they're in a dire straits, Errol's going to find some way to make it a party. That's, you know, he's not going to try to save him. Hetty's going to be the one saving him. Errol's just going to try to have fun for those last couple minutes that he's on Earth, you know, and Charlie's just going to freak out the entire time.
Charlie's going to turn into Kermit from the Muppets and just
that's what he is. You know, he is. It is kind of a Fozzie, Piggy, and Kermit. I never thought Fozzie was that cool, but I guess he is.
He kind of is. He is a bit of a savant, you know. He seems like a complete and utter idiot, but somehow he manages to get a lot of stuff done. One of my favorite scenes of Fozzie, and this is total non sequitur, but my favorite thing that I've ever seen of Fozzie was him when all the Muppets broke up in Muppets Take Manhattan. And they all go back to wherever their homes are. And here's Fozzie sitting in a cave surrounded by other actual bears. And they're all trying to hibernate. And he's got his little teddy bear. And he's like takes his hat off and like, you know, smooths his fur down. And he's just kind of sitting there with his little teddy bear. He's like, does anybody have any like magazines? Like, and he just gets bored. He's like, why are you sleeping for 6 months? This is stupid. And then, you know, but that's
Muppets. There's a lot of Muppets influences in the stuff I make too, so you're not too far off base.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to throw it back at Bill right now. I've got a couple more questions, but I'm going to throw it at Bill, see if he's got something he wants to throw in.
Okay. Pre-Karina Longworth, I'll have to say, I was definitely interested in that world. You go around the corner here and you'll see an entire wall of lobby cards. Nice. Yeah. And I really like to echo what Steve said, phenomenal work. I absolutely
thank you,
love this
bro.
book. Absolutely love this book. And I love the characters that you chose in terms of Hedy Lamarr and Errol Flynn. For people who don't know, they had some very strange real life alignments with Germany
Yeah.
during that time period. And there's other I don't want to give too much away about a particular league that forms, but
Yeah.
there's let people get surprised by that. But I really appreciated a lot of the things that you threw in there along those lines. And you just mentioned about Douglas Fairbanks and you not being able to work that in, and the backstory of the formation of United Artists, and effectively indie rock from people you would not have expected indie rock from,
Exactly.
in terms of the film landscape with the institution of that company. Were there things that you tried, apart from Fairbanks, tried to work in that just whether it would have overloaded it or you just couldn't find the right alignment?
Fairbanks was a good one, but what it became, it became a deeper meaning to me to know that this was going on in Charlie's life while all this other stuff was happening. And so it kind of informed, it's like if you like, I also direct, and so whenever I talk to actors, I'll give them like a secret or something. Here's something that the audience doesn't know, nobody else knows, but you know. And this informs the way that you act in this scene. I think I stole that from Hitchcock. So that's what the Fairbanks thing became, because every time I try to put it in, it kind of makes the story stop. Story stops. Douglas Fairbanks is on his deathbed. Charlie goes and visits him. There isn't like too many things, It just slowed the story down. So that was a huge one. What else was there? I don't know. I kind of just threw it all at the wall then after that, I really, pieces just started coming together and it got bigger than I thought. I always had a problem with the second act before. You get lost. I know, like every story I write, I know how it ends. I know how it begins. Getting lost in the weeds of the second act, that's tricky. But, I started really breaking down like Raiders of the Lost Ark. That informed a lot of it, and realized, like whenever I first wrote it, basically what I'm doing is like Indy's there at the college. They show him in the Bible with the Ark of the Covenant and that lithograph. And then, cut to plane flying to Egypt, and he pulls the Ark out of the pulls the Ark out of the, out of the Well of Souls or whatever. He just like immediately finds it. I wouldn't put my characters on this journey and path. And, I wouldn't have them go meet Marion in Siberia and, find the little thing that or whatever, that little crystal thing that he takes down and shoots the beam of light down to find out where that is. And, his monkey dies because of bad dates, and Marion gets fake killed, and that whole journey that they go on, I would skip all that because I know where my ending is and know where my beginning is. And I wouldn't do that weaving. So the more I would take apart Raiders, I kind of started to understand how to take them on that journey. And so whenever I would do my research, anytime I would find something such as like the Zaka, it's like, okay, I've got to get them on that. And also, Dexter, you need to learn how to draw some boats. I'm going to make you draw a boat, goddammit. I would getting stuck into that. Or getting into those pieces and kind of pushing myself into those different areas and different places where they end up, even though it doesn't make logical sense with the timeline. But yet you still want to see them. Like if they're there, you kind of want to see the blitz, right? You want to see that happen. You want to see that. You want to see that shit. You want to see that, right? If we're going to do it, we're going to do this. We're going to take them there. We're going to have planes, trains, and automobiles. We're going to do the whole thing, And so, I other than Fairbanks, there was nothing that I could think of. There's a tiny little things, but all those will be in the sequel.
Oh, okay, awesome. Good to know. You also had annotations at the end of the book.
Yeah.
And, as you're going through the book, I mean, there's a lot I caught. I mean, there's some really cool allusions to classic comic book covers. There was one to a 90s film that I never would have caught. So that kind of blew my mind. And
wait a minute, which one?
I got the
Oh,
soundtrack.
yeah. Oh, one of my favorite movies, dude. One of my favorite movies. Love it.
That was me reaching over here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I never would have caught that. And I just love that, that you throw so many things into this mix. What made you decide that an annotation might be beneficial? An annotated section.
Because I'm making the book for myself.
Okay.
I'm my first audience, so I like that stuff. Like, I have. Not only do I have Watchmen in various different printings, I also have the Watchmen annotations, and I also have, the other book is like, what is it? The Making of Watchmen. Where it's right down there. It's down the bottom shelf. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is it called?
Oh,
Watching the Watchmen.
Watching the Watchmen.
So I have that. I love reading those things. I have the annotations for Sandman. I love reading that. And I just figured if people dig what I'm digging, they'll probably like to read this and kind of see where I was coming from, and kind of, I'll tell you where all the Easter eggs are. Because I could never be a magician. It's like I would do the trick. I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to show you how I did it now. I would be David Copperfield making the Statue of Liberty disappear. It's like, no, hold on. Let me show you what I built. It's pretty freaking cool. It's this whole rotating thing. This is how the trick was done.
Okay, now, and with this particular project, you're the creator, the writer, the letterist, the colorist, but you didn't do it all. You didn't do it all yourself. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your cohorts in this project, Dexter and John? Yeah. So, it's got to be conspirators given the terrain that this covers. Yeah.
Well, John Judy is he's one of my best friends. Known him for a long time. He just got his doctorate at Kent State. He's smarter than I am. So if I'm going to work with somebody, I'm going to work with somebody smarter than me. Same thing with as Dexter. If I'm going to work with an artist, I'm going to work with an artist that's better than me. So I can kind of, draft on there, follow along and kind of, hopefully I'm helping them become better too. That's the collaborative process. If you're pushing each other, and I felt like I could do that with both John and Dexter, is kind of push them to do things that they wouldn't normally do, like Dexter drawing boats or airplanes, or I realized that Dexter was getting really good at expressions. He's doing something that I can't do very well, which is take a character and show a multitude of different expressions. And so I started just making him do that because it just would make me laugh. It's just like, let's see how many different faces that Charlie Chaplin can do. Just stack them up side by side in a, Calvin and Hobbes kind of Bill Watterson style, where Charlie's just making faces for half a page, because it makes me laugh. I think it's funny. And I just want to see, it's like, how hard can I push you till you break? Can I get to a point where you can't make any more faces? Can I get you to a point where it's like you can't draw any more ship masts and ropes and stuff? Where is your limits? And I still can't find them with Dexter. It's amazing. Same thing with John. It's like there were scenes where it's like, okay, he thought it should just end here, but I always say that my terminology, because just the way it feels like a scene is pregnant. It feels like there is more in that scene, and we haven't given birth to that scene fully yet. And I think there's more that we can deliver from that scene, and then so dig down a little bit deeper and deeper into that scene to mine it for everything that scene is worth. And try to get as much from that scene as possible. And a lot of times I think that that we were going past where John would want the story to go, but I think we found something like comedy gold, or some deeper insights in the characters, but going beyond. Typically you're supposed to start a scene late and end it early. Sometimes I just want to linger in this scene a little bit and see what happens. Where's it going? How's it going to twist? Where's it going to go? And it's kind of a challenge myself too, and see like how many different ways can I, work through this scene. And then also we both have our own talents. Like John sometimes is really good at, not sometimes, he's really good at like putting together finding these moments of gravitas and finding ways of taking the characters and really getting like great dialogue out of them. And like there's a whole scene with FDR where it plays along with this balance. It's a tightrope walk of trying to keep it funny, but yet serious, and keep it respectful of both Charlie Chaplin. Well, not so much Charlie Chaplin. I do all kinds of shit with him, but you got to be respectful of FDR. And how far can you take that before you're not being respectful of him, and yet allow him to be witty, be funny, have his own like little character arc. And in that scene with him was great. And then we called back to him at the end. Little spoiler, we bring the FDR back into it. So I just let John handle that part, because John is a huge like FDR nerd. Like he has a bust of FDR in his living room. I'm not joking. You know, so he has an entire like two shelves on his bookshelf of FDR biographies and stuff. And we just talked last week for like 2 hours about the new one he's reading about FDR and Churchill, which is fascinating. So I knew that he was the one to write those scenes. But then at the end of the book, I just let him write those, and I'm expecting more of that. And he just makes him out to be a dick. It's awesome. It's so funny. I would have never thought to take FDR in that way. I would have never thought just to make him a dick, a pompous dick right there. And it's so freaking funny. But yet it's still respectful. It's still, you know, it's still kind of in character and stuff. And that's the collaboration. That's what I love, finding those pieces. And you know, and also with Dexter is just like every morning whenever I'd open up a new email, it was like a Christmas morning. So it's like, what is this? 192 Christmas mornings, you know? It was wonderful.
All right. I still have more questions, but I'll throw it back to Steve for now.
Well, I'm going to go and actually, I'm going to throw it back to Bill. No, I'm actually just going to linger. I mean, like you had said, linger at a scene. I really like hearing about this kind of collaboration, and you know, knowing that you have that history in film and directing, and understanding, you know, kind of how scenes work in motion pictures. You've got old Hollywood characters here. You've got, you know, one of the main plots, of course, is him making this film. How do you think your sort of understanding of, you know, how a film works, and how, you know, the production of a film works, and how a film flows narratively, informed sort of how you three were working in creating that same type of almost motion picture feel in a static medium, and essentially a static medium with comic books, but still there's the motion that's visible in it. Yeah, it's implied, and also when you have those, like you had mentioned about the multiple, you know, changes in facial features, or sort of like those panels where there is, you know, like moment to moment kind of motion. You know, it becomes a little bit more, you know, more dynamic and motion. Like, how do you think that sort of film, you know, understanding sort of informed your?
It does quite a bit, but a big part of it is there is some great writing on comics. You know, Bendis did a great book. Of course, Scott McCloud's book is fucking amazing. Eisner's book is great. You know, but there aren't these books that are like really gets down to the nitty gritty nuts and bolts and details like a screenwriting book does. And so a lot of my writing is reflected more in like screenwriting books I've read. So I think that would be a little bit more of it. But so, you know, everything from Sid Field and John Truby and Story, Robert McKee, and Blake Snyder, you know, just taking all of these and putting them all down. And then also stuff like Poetics by Aristotle, and taking all those and like finding all of those pieces and trying to figure out how to tell a story through those. And that helps me break it down to like arc structures. So then I started breaking my comics down to arc structures. So if you have a 5-page or 5-issue series, break that into 3 arcs. So first issue is first act, second, third, and fourth, middle act. Last issue is final act, is third act. So then within those act structures, you realize like issue 3, halfway through issue 3, you need to have your midpoint. That's where they go on the Zaka. You know, you've got to take the action and kind of, you don't turn it completely. You just do a little like adjustment. And then also through each issue, break each issue down into 3 acts. So issue 1 has 3 acts within. So I say like pages 1 through 5 is act 1, pages 6 through 18 is act 2, and 18 to 24 is act 3. And then break down each act to each act. And so working, like you said, was with collaborators, we would have like a Google Docs and I would just lay it all out, and I would already have this tree made up of like where things needed to happen. Now, I never worked that way before. I was always like resistant of working with an outline, but this time I decided to try it, and I freaking loved it, because what I could do is I could just easily plot out this book and say like, these are the things that need to happen. Bam, 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 bam. And then if John had like an evening that he could work on it, he could break down, a couple pages and break down this scene and know like where this scene needs to start and end and where it needs to go. And, each page would just have like a couple lines that says what happens, and then, I know what my strengths were too. And one of the things I really did, and it's in reference to something you were talking about a couple weeks ago about like comic books that film properties that were trying to be pitched and they turn them into comic books. Mm-hmm. You were talking about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw my 2 cents in on that, and you did talk about, I was like, you could tell which ones like really like love the medium and did a little bit more and actually embrace the medium. Here, I really wanted to go. I mean, we're kind of edging out of the 2000s, which everything was widescreen comics. You have Brian Hitch and Ultimates, and you have this, comics as storyboards and comics as pitching the movie. And I wanted to embrace the medium and do what the medium could do best and do what was best for this medium, not what was potentially going to be a movie. Instead, it's like things that could only exist on the page, because comics work different than movies. Comics just aren't storyboards that are laid out, because like you were saying, it's static. The action happens in your head. So in the head of the audience. So I would liken it to a dance. It's like you as a creator, you're dancing with the audience. You're doing this both in as in filmmaking, but you're also doing it in comics. You have the creator and you have the your partner, the audience. And so the audience has to bring a certain level of panache to that dance too, right? In movies, they have to bring a less, because, the director and the filmmaking is doing all the work, and it's such a pervasive forward momentum and such a great illusion of 24 frames a second flashing in front of your eyes and seeing this persistence of vision, that creating this story, it just is going to happen whether you're wanting it to or not. It's just going to happen in front of your eyes. Whereas a comic, you have to deliberately sit there and you don't realize what you're doing, but you are recreating the story in your mind. You are recreating. So it's a different kind of dance. You are guiding them, but they've got to bring in their own dance moves and put the things together and assemble it in their own head. And playing with that and realizing I was doing that, but also remembering that I am my first audience, so I'm trying to make this thing work the best way for me and see how far I can push this medium in my own way. I'm not like hitting any kind of fucking Watchmen level or, Neil Gaiman level, but, how far can I take a book about Charlie Chaplin punching Hitler in the face? How far can I take that and turn it into like look at the storytelling and look at the way that you can communicate a story through pictures, down to like, using the margins. There's a whole part at the end where like I could not get the pages to line up the same way you would in a film. In a film, you can cross cut. You can't really do that in comics without breaking the tempo and the forward momentum. And so I took a cue from one of my favorite artists that doesn't get the credit he deserves as a comic comic brilliance, a genius, which is Sergio Agoni's. So
yes.
magazine, Sergio Agoni's would like make these little stories, these one-panel stories in all the margins. That was my freaking favorite thing to look at as a kid. Not only because it's cool, it's like this little hidden art in the margins, but also it's like every once in a while you could see like a little little boobies or like with two little nipples, as a 10-year-old, like he's naked, I'm getting away with something, Mom and Dad don't know because it's in the margins,
Yep.
But then just taking that and how can I fold that into the storytelling, So I have the plot B going one direction. The plot A has to keep moving forward. But so can I take the plot B and instead of cross-cutting, can I just stick it in the margins? Like, can I make it work in the margins? That was a bitch. That was freaking hard. And I think I did okay. I didn't do Sergio Agoni's level of brilliance, but it was fun. It was freaking fun. It was a lot of fun. So
that's cool.
Kept me entertained. Kept me from not wanting to blow my brains out while, reading a Trump tweet. It's like, okay, I'm turning off Twitter and I'm just going to figure out how to make these, make Errol Flynn punch a Nazi in the face and make it look cool in the margins.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it kept me sane for 4 years.
Wow.
Well, when I say sane, relatively.
Yeah, the relative sane.
The version you needed, yeah.
I mean, there was a lot to work. There wasn't that much work to begin with, But
awesome. Well, hey, Bill, back to you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
If people have ever seen The Great Dictator, there's an amazing section towards the end where Charlie Chaplin breaks the fourth wall and he has this impassioned plea for freedom and peace. And, as you said, he, had worked in silent film. So this is probably, at that time, the first time anybody had ever heard his actual speaking voice.
Yeah.
And not the Barber character. And there's a real strange intimacy to that when you watch it. It's a very unique experience. It's unlike other fourth wall breakage. There's something to it, and we have that as part of the storyline. And was that something you always intended? Because that, I mean, I have to say, like, I finished this book in sections and I was wiping tears. And these are words I've been familiar with before. And, how that is presented in that story it really knocked my socks off. Awesome. I was wondering, was that always an intention from the time that you conceived this, that you were going to have, that sequence represented?
Yeah, it was totally the inception. That was the end goal. That was the finish line. You're right. It is such you get that speech sometimes, like making the rounds on Facebook or whatever. Mm-hmm. But to see it in context and to understand the context of the day and who Chaplin was, there was never a movie star or human being. There was never a hominid on this fucking planet that was to the level of Charlie Chaplin in 1940. And we can't understand that now.
Yeah.
Because you get through the silent era, and at that point, Chaplin becomes the biggest star on the fucking planet. Like, there is no number two. It's the Tramp character was so pervasive and still is, that it was so understandable and so relatable without language, and crossed language barriers because it was just visual. You could just easily throw in new title cards and change out the language. But also on top of that, that was one of the reasons that, silent films were able to cross national borders so easily. You wouldn't have to translate them. Mm-hmm. But Chaplin himself, it's like him and Buster Keaton kind of had a thing back and forth is how few of those title cards do we need? How much can we just tell the story visually? And Chaplin was so just recognizable and so known by the entire world. You have to understand who he was too. He's playing the Tramp. And so the Tramp is a character that's standing up toward authority. He's standing up and thumbing his nose at authority. And so you look the world over, that's one reason that that's a universal story is, the poor looking up and seeing, how they're being stepped on by those that are privileged and rich, and, those with means and those that do not. And how Chaplin could just encourage them and was such an advocate of the worker in all of his stories and everything he did, the common man. And then, so that's where he's at in 1940. He still has that kind of presence. And so he makes his first talking movie, and you go through the entire thing. There's a bunch of fun stuff. There's funny stuff. There's the whole thing with the earth bouncing around like a balloon. That's great. There's the bomb chasing him around. He's doing all the typical Chaplin shenanigans and stuff. Fun stuff. Then he gets to the end of the movie, and he's got the world's attention in 1940. And he breaks, like you said, he breaks the fourth wall, and he speaks to the audience as Charlie Chaplin, not as the barber, not as the Tramp, not as Hinkle. He just breaks the fourth wall at this point, talks directly to the audience, and says, "Don't do this. Men, do not allow yourself to be made as machines. You are not machines. You do not have to listen to these people that are enslaving you." He is talking to the common man. He's talking to the soldiers. He's talking to the average Nazi soldier and the average Japanese soldier, and telling them, you don't have to listen to these people. You don't have to listen. He is the biggest person on this planet at that time. And that's the message he's delivering to everyone is, don't listen to these people. They don't have the power. You have the power. Don't listen. And God damn it if everybody didn't listen to him. God damn it if everybody didn't just listen to him. They could have put down their guns, and they didn't have to listen to those fuckers, because the only power that they had was that people followed them. And if people didn't follow them, they had no power. And Chaplin knew that. He knew that. And he implored them in that speech. One of the greatest speeches in fucking human history. Up there with the Gettysburg Address and every other freaking great speech. Up there with Martin Luther King's speech. Is Chaplin's speech. And I wanted to pay homage to that. That was the whole reason for the book, was that. And there was one page that I knew at the beginning that I wanted to do, and I wanted to work toward that. And what it was I wanted to use the word balloons and use Chaplin's speech to create a noose around Hitler's neck. I wanted to choke Hitler with those words. And I don't know if I pulled it off, but I tried. I tried the best that I could.
Oh, brother, you pulled it off. Believe me, I'm welling up again with your passion about talking about the sequence. Oh, brother. This is going to seem like such a shallow transition, but I think it needs to be said here.
Yeah. I think we need to bring it down a notch, right?
Yeah, and I have to say, when you said the sequel, this heart grew 5 times. Very happy to hear that. But in terms of other things that you're involved with, in your bios, there's other comic projects listed as the Wolves of Babylon, and Sonic Euthanasia. So can you just give us, very quick script about what those are about?
Sonic Euthanasia, I've been working on forever. I've been working on it ever since I was in college, at least. And it's completely irrelevant by now that, the world has moved past it. I've moved past it, but it's still there in my head. And I fucking love that title. And
it's awesome.
If I ever get a chance that I can sit down and draw my own book and do that, I'm going to do that. And here's the thing. I have 12 false starts with that book. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at all these pages that I've drawn. Pages I drew whenever I was in college, pages I drew in my mid-20s, pages I drew in my 30s. And, I can see the evolution of my art style. And I keep drawing some of the same sequences over and over again and keep rewriting it and keep adding things and taking things away. And it's a story. And then, so what I want to do is, I know this is wacky. I want to make my blankets basically out of it. What it is, it's going to be autobiographical kind of. It's going to be about me making that story and never being able to finish it. think about all these people that that are great storytellers, but never finish that fucking thing. And that's been me most of my life. It's like, and all of my friends know all of the plot beats of Sonic Euthanasia. If you're a close friend of mine, you know that. My best friend, Dan, I've known him since, we were teenagers, and he's known it since, way back in the 90s, And so he's seen all the iterations. And that's kind of it, is me continuing to tell, and the story is going to be me telling him that story over and over again as we grow older and as things change and as I have kids and as he goes off and does this and I go do that. And, our lives keep changing and the story keeps changing. But every time we get together, I'm telling him more and more about this story reflected in the pages of that era that I drew. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's what I want to make out of Sonic Euthanasia. That's the only way it's going to be relevant anymore, because nobody fucking cares about Gen X anymore. Gen X is a forgotten generation.
There's something circular happening. So, there may be a window where this is the right project.
What was his name? Douglas? He was
Douglas. Oh yeah, he's the guy. Douglas Copeland.
Douglas Copeland was the voice of Gen X, and he was the arbiter of what was Gen X, in the 90s especially. But yeah, that would be something kind of like an anti-Douglas Copeland, mirror type thing. It would be really interesting to see, because I read some of that, because I guess technically I'm 1980, so I guess I'm like ass end of Gen X and like pre-millennial whatever. So I, of course, had to read some of his stuff.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's an interesting image. And I, seeing that kind of evolution would be really amazing.
Yeah. I got to find the time where I can dedicate, because I can't let anybody else put their hands on this. I've got to do it. You know what I mean? This is me. It's like if Craig Thompson would have had somebody else draw blankets. Yeah, that doesn't work. You know what I mean? It's got to be. Craig Thompson has to draw blankets. It's it's too autobiographical and too close, and it talks about that, because I'm sure you have friends like that, or maybe you're that too. That you have these stories that you keep telling your friends that never get made, and they're going to die with us. These characters are going to die with us and never go anywhere. And how many writers or wannabe writers or creators just never got that? Never left that. And I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with like telling it to your friends and you get satisfied with that, so that you never have the desire and need to actually put it to paper and make this thing. And then time passes by that story, but that story keeps morphing. And then eventually that story just dies with you, because you never made anything with it. And how Gen X is that?
Yeah, no.
I think I saw that Jim Jarmusch movie. No, that's awesome. Then get to work. Get this out.
I know, right?
The world has to know about the next Nirvanas.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
All those bomb groups.
Yeah. That's what I'm going to do in my 50s. Once my kids are like, when I turn 50, Megan's going to be, 18, going to college. So now I can sit back and stop paying child support and write my funny book. I won't be cool enough to go to the cool bars anymore. I'll be a fucking old man. I could just stay home and write my funny book. I'm already too old to go to the cool bars, but I'm still pretending. I'm going to pretend for 5 more years. Yeah, I'm 45. I didn't do the math. How old am I? But,
what year is it?
And then Wolves of Babylon. That's a werewolf story. I got to play all the sides of the field, So it's like, it's not werewolf. I want to do for werewolves what Bram Stoker did for vampires. So,
okay.
Think about that. We don't have a literary werewolf story. We don't have, like, if you did like Family Feud, and it's like, name a vampire. It's up on the board. It's like all of them are just Dracula. There's nobody else. It's like all the points. They buzz in Dracula next round. That's it. There's no other vampires. Like, what are you going to do? Put that like the Twilight vampire? No. Lestat, maybe Lestat. Okay, it's going to go Dracula, Lestat. That's it. Boom, boom, done. Yeah. But do that for werewolves. Name a werewolf. There's nothing on the board. There's nothing. You can't name a werewolf. I mean, like Lon Chaney. No, that's an actor. American Werewolf in London. No, what is that werewolf? He's not a mascot. He's just, there isn't like this mascot of all werewolves. There isn't this one that like takes the whole genre and you just hanging on that. You hanging on them like Dracula. All vampires have to relate or somehow reconcile with Dracula. You can't make a vampire book without reconciling with Dracula. You don't have that with werewolves. It's kind of a bastard, this subgenre of, but it doesn't need to be. It's just as potent as vampires, and so I kind of want to do that. Yeah, but yeah, it's all pretentious and whatever. It'll be fun. Like I'll do the pretentious stuff. I'll be like Tarantino, where you do the pretentious stuff, but we're still going to see the gnarly stuff. I'm still going to give you some totally werewolf action.
I'm still going to call in Robbie Rodriguez. He's going to do some stuff. It'll be close through some
shit's going to go down. Things are going to get bloody, but then we'll do all the pretentious like bullshit stuff where we talk about like Babylonian werewolves and Nebuchadnezzar and all that shit. We'll talk about.
We've all seen From Dusk Till Dawn. I mean, that is true. Like a lot of Tarantino movies, anytime that he collaborates, it is definitely two separate movies that you're watching. You watch the Tarantino movie, and then you're watching everything else.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Yep.
That might actually be an inspiration. That is so schizophrenic. It's like you can tell which parts he wrote, and then you can tell which parts it was Robert Kurtzman wrote that last part. He was the effects artist on that. And you can tell it's like they get to the titty twister and bam, it's not a Tarantino movie anymore. Eyeballs are popping out of heads and going to rockets.
Heads exploding.
It's like it just goes bonkers. It's like Reservoir Dogs, and then all of a sudden it just goes fucking Looney Tunes bonkers.
All right, Sean. Well, thank you so much for giving us all the background about Führer and the Tramp. If people want to check some elements of it out on the interwebs, where would they go?
Usually, you can go to Facebook. You can look up Führer and the Tramp on Facebook. Also, FührerandTheTramp.com. It's going to be released as a trade paperback June 28th. It is right now in previews. The order code is APR 21-1923. So if you have never figured out how previews codes work, here's how they work. The APR means April. The 21 means this year. So April 21, and then the 1923, it's just 1923.
Yeah.
That one. It was,
the sequential code of whatever
And I have to say, I really dug your Facebook address of Adolf and Charlie.
You wouldn't let me do Führer. Facebook,
okay.
That's why you use the word Führer. It's like you can show all kinds of crazy shit, and you can just fucking have a QAnon shit on Facebook, and you can like have literal Nazis on Facebook, but I can't call it the Führer and the Tramp.
Well, yeah.
Whatever. I don't get it. So I had to call it Adolf and Charlie.
Adolf and Charlie.
Yeah.
The Charlie Chaplin book, you know the one.
Yeah, this is not like pro-Nazism. We punch a lot of Nazis in this book and beat the shit out of Nazis and punch mustaches off their faces and shit, and make them look stupid that they really were. It's more like the producers. That was that kind of vibe is what I was kind of going with. It's just. Well, it's also right there in Great Dictator. Hinkle's a complete moron,
Yeah.
That's what I was. That's the vibe of it is. And really, when you start reading about Hitler, which I did, I read like Rise and Fall of the Third Reich and stuff. They were morons. They were just morons, kind of like someone else.
Yeah.
They're just morons. You don't have to follow them.
I don't think it's some great words to end on.
Yeah.
So on our show, when we do a show, we have our interview segment first, and then we talk about some current comics. And we would be very happy if you want to stick around.
I want to so badly, but I'm looking at the clock, and but
well, why don't you get to the book before you split? Why don't you get to the book that you would have talked about?
So I went to Kent State University, like I said. I'm an adjunct teacher at Kent State, and so for most of the world, May 4 is about Star Wars Day. May the Force be with you. But if you went to Kent, it's about Kent State. It's about Four Dead in Ohio, which is written by Durf Backdurf, who's a fantastic artist, fantastic comic artist and writer. And this book is about the shooting of the killing of 4 students and wounding, I think, of 13 in Kent State during the student protests in 1970. And it's just so scarily relevant. That's what sucks. Is like, so that my Chaplin book is scarily relevant, and this is scarily relevant. And I don't think it was whenever Durf started this, but it is. And it's shocking how I was rereading parts of it tonight. Like I picked it up because I picked it up yesterday because it was May 4, and I was reading through it, and man, yeah, some of it just really, like, I was overcome with emotions reading this stuff and thinking about that, and having been a student and walking across that every day of my life, knowing that. I mean, that as a student there, walking across where those students were shot and seeing the statue that still has bullet holes in it. I went in the 90s. That happened in the 70s. I wasn't even born yet. So, that it's very much still a heavy, heavy blanket. Well, it was in the 90s. It still kind of is now, but it's like a lot of my professors were there at the time that it happened. Some of them were actually there and got shot at. So it is a heavy moment in Kent, in Ohio, and also in American history. They just freaking laid waste to 4 students. And most of the ones that got shot were just walking to their classes. They weren't even protesting.
Yeah. Again, that's a book we have talked about on the show in the past. So
fantastic.
Everybody, not a third time. And again, the world building that, for someone like Steve and myself, who, basically have no connection with the campus, the terrain that he provided, with the coffee shops and the band that one of the guys that was shot was in, and everything. You got to know these people in a very economic sense. Really,
I see these houses. I know that house. Yeah. I hooked up with a girl in that house. I know this house. Like I went to a party at that house one time. Like I know the streets that he's drawing. I know the water tower, and I see the water tower and know exactly where he's standing when he made that drawing. I was an art student there. I walked around campus and did a lot of those same drawings. It's completely accurate. It's what's funny is one of the houses is actually Craig P. Russell's house that's in the book. That's really kind of cool. Really, Craig P. Russell lives in Kent.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure one of the houses, it's Craig P. Russell's house. I won't tell you which one, so you can't, go look.
Can't go and stalk him.
Yeah, I mean,
hurry up and finish drawing the rest of whatever Neil Gaiman is writing this week.
Have you ever had Craig on here?
No, but we've seen him on Growler.
Craig's
you have.
He is so great.
Yeah, no, I'd love to have him on. I mean, just the through line from Killraven and Doctor Strange, and then the it's actually in a pile over there. I just got the Magic Flute from the 80s when he started doing those adaptations of the operas.
Oh, right, right, so great.
Yeah, really good stuff. Well, we also know you have a trip coming up, so safe travels.
That's why I have to take off.
Yeah. But Sean, we've loved having you on. I want to be friends with you. I'll be honest, because this is your passion for this. It makes me want to reread what I just read.
Aww,
I mean, and nice. And I'm certain there's bits and pieces that I didn't catch the first time around. So best of luck with the paperback release. guests.
Thank you.
We'll have links up. And are there any other points of contact that people should know if they want to get in touch with you?
It's basically Facebook. I'm more of a Facebook guy. Like I got off Twitter through the Trump stuff, and I barely ever got on Twitter anyway.
Toxic,
it's so toxic. So Facebook, Instagram. That's typically it.
All right, great.
You find my email. It's really easy to figure out Kent State emails. It's just s@kent.edu.
Yeah.
I've had that email since 1994. Whenever I became a student.
Oh god.
I think it's longer than most people have had email.
No, you should.
Yeah.
Keep your .edus. I knew that at the time. Keep your .edu account. If your college doesn't get rid of it, keep your .edu account. It comes in very useful to have a .edu account.
I can tell you right now, a lot of colleges actually have started purging. Students that as soon as they matriculate a student, they're like, "Okay, you're done," and like delete everything.
That sucks.
So yeah, for some of those, probably because they've gotten wise.
Yeah. But yeah, I never got rid of it. I knew it was going to be valuable. I won't tell you why it's valuable. You can figure that out on your own, Apple discounts. So
discounts are good.
But yeah, I'm sorry, I got to balance. I wish.
No problem at all. Thank you for the time that you provided with us, and again, best of luck with everything coming up.
Yeah, definitely. It was wonderful talking with you. Take care.
Take care,
so much.
Take care. Bye.
There we go. Awesome.
That was awesome. Oh god, that was such a good interview. We didn't do anything. We just let him talk. Oh my god, hearing him talk.
Line up the talking point, and then there you go.
God,
it's
hearing
awesome,
him
like
talking
everything.
about the breaking the fourth wall sequence from the film. Oh my god. Oh my god! I just want to. Seriously. Once we're done, I'm just going to check out. I mean, I saw the new, but I want to check everything out again. And again, I just remembered that we are video, but it's still an audio release. And the film that we referenced that I had was Jackie Chan's classic Super Cop.
Yes.
So this is the CD. It has Devo's really awful version of Nine Inch Nails, Head Like a Hole. If you've ever heard it, it's god awful. You have Tom Jones with Ruby singing Kung Fu Fighting. This is like the perfect 90s soundtrack. It really is.
I remember when that came out, I was working at Blockbuster, and that was like an entire 2 wall sections just of Super Cop on DVD. It was wild.
Yeah.
Man. Well, I guess we still have some minutes over here, so maybe we can talk about some comics that we
Yes.
I was just gonna talk about one because
okay.
There's a lot.
I would like to talk about 3, but they're all connected.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Sounds good.
You start off as you always do there, son.
I guess I will. So, every once in a while, I'm one of those people that I tend to know what I'm going to be picking up when I go into my LCS. I've got my pull list, so I know what's going to be in my box. I look at the apps. The one that I use personally is Comic Shopper. It's really, really exciting name, but it gives you the next week's all the releases, so you can just create your own list, your own shopping list every week, and every Wednesday it repopulates. So I know what I'm going to be getting in my pull box. I know what I'm going to be looking for on the wall. But every once in a while, something surprises me. It just pops out. Judge that book by its cover, so to speak. And that happened to me this past week with this Helm Greycastle #1, put out by Image/Top Cow. I had no idea what this book was.
I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, I hadn't read anything about it. This, I think, is this isn't the primary cover. I think this is cover D or whatever it is, maybe C or D. But I just was intrigued by the fact that there's this huge shirtless dude with a mohawk, with a sword. I was like, looks cool. Maybe I'll go for that. And the very super like Conan-ish name Helm Greycastle. I just was like, okay, this is going to be kind of neat. And I picked up. It's written by Henry Barajas and drawn by Brian Valenza. You've got also Ramat Handauko on pencils as well, and along there's a lot of people on here. What Helm Greycastle, after reading it, I did some research. This started as a Kickstarter. So issue number 1 was a Kickstarter last year, around November, December. It was funded, so it did come out for those original backers, issue number 1. And then it was picked up by Image for a 4-issue series. So the interesting thing about this is that the premise is set in a, I would say, European-style fantasy world that takes place in the Aztec Empire. So in, Middle Ages Mexico. And so the main antagonists are actually Emperor Montezuma III and his court of gods, who are essentially creating a dictatorship and an extended empire through Mesoamerica. Meanwhile, there are also orcs, there are dragons, there are skeleton creatures, there are all sorts of things. And our heroes are in a party, with Helm Greycastle at the leadership, and several other really cool. You've got a dwarf, you've got Helm's mate, who is she's a green-skinned orc of some sort. They have a child. There's a bard. The dwarf is romantically involved with another male orc. And so you've got this really cool party of characters here that are doing the usual questing, but then they get mixed up in this interesting sort of Aztec dictatorial march across Mesoamerica, and trying to rescue the last dragon prince, or a baby dragon. They get pulled into the intrigue between a rebel faction and the imperial faction. It's fantastic. It's a setting I haven't seen before. You don't really have a lot of these sort of fantasy things mixing with real historical Central and South American environments. So that was pretty cool. And also, if you are an RPG person, if you're a tabletop gamer, there is a complete campaign in here. Well, not a campaign, but a complete adventure called Sacred Armor that is fully mapped out for anybody who wants to GM a game set in this world. Of sort of an Aztec empire that beat the Spanish and kicked them back out to Europe. So very cool. Check it out. It's a 4-part series. So there'll be 3 more issues after this one. Check it out. Helm Greycastle.
Okay, I'm looking at the clock, and I think I have to speed mine up a little bit. Sure. But I did move into the world of Black Hammer. I haven't gotten to Barbalian, and I'm still looking for that goddamn first issue of Visions. But I
might have you on that.
You have me.
I might have you on that with Visions number 1. So,
all right. So, am I trading that for this with you?
No, you're fine.
You're covered with this.
I think I'm covered with that one.
Okay.
Because I've already asked my LCS about that, but I think you are covered with Visions number 1.
If you're not.
Check back with me.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
But again, my favorite version of Astro City on Crystal Meth, Black Hammer. We did have the wrap up of Colonel Weird Cosmogog, and this one really blew me away. Again, this is written by Jeff Lemire, who's the creator and overseer of the entire universe, with some incredible art by Tyler Crook. And this is one thing I got to say, the use of whites throughout these miniseries, you don't really get it in the main Black Hammer series, but what we've seen in certain series like 45 and Dr. Star, there's just these, there seems to be a commonality of the use of white. And we have that here. I'm not going to give away what happens that instigates that, but this one really blew me away because the characters in Black Hammer are worlds away from happily ever after. they're being tortured left and right in these storylines. And what we have with Colonel Weird is a resolution of his limitations. He understands that. He lets others take over decisions, and we actually have what could be the start of a happy ending with this series. We have a return of a character that I think we were all worried about a little bit. And in terms of stories that tie directly into Black Hammer, this one anchors that much more efficiently than some of the others have. But, this is Colonel Weird's fucked up and been fucked. And to see him have a good day, I think is the smile on the face that was unexpected, and I was very happy about that. I also wanted to talk about Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy. This book has had ridiculous delays. Almost a full year from its beginning to its last issue, and possibly even more. I'm trying to think. But
I think
it definitely got hit.
It was
hard by the scheduling with COVID, but we did recently have the last issue 6, and I finally got to issue 5. And the artist on this is Tansi Zaniak, and again, I gotta say, like this is like this this book is just one that throws you so many curveballs. We went in to think that this is the Punisher analog, but with a sidekick, and there's some elements that are far more Batman and Robin as we go through the series. And Ray is the detective. She's right out of Gotham PD. When you come to think of it, and what the basic storyline is she is Skeleton Boy, who's gone through some shit, is effectively kidnapped by the detective to get him away from this lifestyle, and that wasn't the wisest move because it puts him in a far more dangerous predicament than he was in the past. And throughout 5 and 6, we see that final storyline for where Skeleton Boy ends up. Not so much on the happy ever after scale as Cosmogod, but there is some resolution. And again, just this amazing use of whites throughout the Black Hammer series. This amazing panel here, just how his layouts flow. I mean, the art in this book is just fantastic, and
so bold. Like the lines and the colors when he chooses colors. Oh,
yeah, and the sequence where Skeleton Boy has to make a decision, and then the decision itself is first in black. But then in the brightest colors you can imagine. I don't want you to see too much of that if you haven't read it for what his decision is. But again, I have to abbreviate these, but these ancillary miniseries that Black Hammer has birthed, they've all been worthwhile. And so with these 2 books, I'm really glad that I was able to finish those and have a few others to tackle.
Awesome.
But go read that Black Hammer. It's some of the best twisted superhero stories you're ever going to read. Yeah,
definitely.
Steve, you have an awesome shirt. Can you just lift yourself up a little bit to show what that is?
So I know it's not May the 4th anymore, but I did want to show my
But it's the Revenge of the 5th.
Shirt.
Yes,
it is Revenge of the 5th.
Yes.
But I got this wonderful shirt. This is from Woot, like so many of my shirt designs are. But it is an X-Wing Rainbow Pride, basically. So I will be wearing this probably a couple times in the future, maybe in June during Pride Month, probably, because it is a fantastic shirt. And I just love the colors and the design on it. So when to gush. What's your shirt?
Oh, my shirt. This is an independent series by Tom Zahler called Love and Capes. It's been going on for some time. That's Crusader and Abby. One of the meaner more caustic descriptions of the series is what if Lois and Clark was good? Uh, yeah,
Ooh.
yeah,
Yeah, I believe it's called Superman and Lois.
It's, yes, yes. There you go. But again, I think this is like probably like it started 15 years ago, and he's had numerous series that go through the various stages of Crusader and Abby's relationship. If you've never checked it out, it's really sweet, wonderful stories
Awesome.
that he has in those books. Yeah, and he's an accountant. Which is,
I can see that.
God, give the guy a break. He's gonna be superiors and have a terrible civilian existence like that.
So before we do our wolves, I did want to give recognition to everybody who was able to join tonight. I know we were on a weird night. It was a Wednesday, but it was what time that we could get a hold of Sean, and we wanted to get him. So, so for the people who have joined in tonight, we've had Anthony Comito. We also had John Runyon, who joined us very briefly at the beginning because a comic book look is also on a Wednesday night. But he did come back, so he slid back in to tune into the end. So hello again, John. We've also got David Toby as well. Hello, David. It's always wonderful to see you.
And he did chime in on Henry Barajas.
Yeah, Henry Barajas. Yeah.
My friend Vince Tenebra tuned in, so thank you, Vince.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vince. So yeah, just wanted to mention everybody who was able to join in tonight because I know it is a weird night for us to be on.
And I got my auction books and trivia wins. Oh God, I just love this stuff. But I'm not going to bother you people with that. According to the time, we have to start wrapping up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar here. This is where we signify something which may be a comic book, but it may also be a TV program or a film or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, my woof of the week is a TV show. Shock. It may not be the TV show that you will be talking about. This one is actually back for its third and final season. And that show is Pose on FX. So it is the final season of Pose. If you've watched the first two seasons, you know they take place at different periods in the late 80s and early 90s, specifically about the ballroom scene following a family, a house of several people who are involved heavily in the ballroom scene. It's very, very big with trans representation, gay representation, queer representation, and especially with the Latinx and the communities of color. So it is an extremely important series to watch. There are a lot of criticisms that can be thrown at it in terms of dialogue and direction. Yes, but it's also extremely important to celebrate this really wonderful show. And of course, the emotions in it. I think there's not an episode that goes by that doesn't have me crying at some point or laughing hysterically. So Pose season 3 just started. It's on Sunday nights on FX, or you can watch it, I know there's a little bit of a weird thing this time around where it may not be on Hulu, FX on Hulu until after the season is done, or later in the season. There's some weird thing with the streaming rights on it, but when it is done, it will be eventually streaming on Netflix and Hulu. So
yeah, this season I was especially looking forward to watching because in '94, for a portion of the year, I lived in the city. I worked in the city. I certainly had friends that were affected by the AIDS epidemic, and though my existence was worlds away from ballroom and drag. The general vibe in the city was something palpable. That initial scene in the first episode where you do see the shutdown of a sex club is something very familiar. So
thanks, Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah. So Dink can suck too. I'm looking forward to this season, and again, you mentioned it is the final season. I don't know how many stories they have left to tell. So this does seem to be a very smart move. So,
and also for some of the characters, how much time they have left.
You
know,
well, we're not that far from the cocktail.
No.
So we'll see what happens. And for my Wolf of the Week, I do wish that Sean had been able to stick around, because my wolf relates to classic Hollywood. And this time the wolf goes out to this Cary Grant collection from Kino Lorber. Cary is my favorite actor of all time. And just devastatingly handsome in this picture here. It's just impossibly handsome. And what this collection does is it groups 3 films from his period where he was a contract player at Paramount in the 32 to about 36, 37 or so. When people talk about classic films, very often they talk about the real marquee, the real, top-notch product that has survived the times and the reputations have been intact. These are not those films. These are films that were programmers. These are films that were part of the factory system, and they have value of their own. And you receive a tremendous education watching these films as well, just as you would seeing something like Gone with the Wind or Casablanca or Wizard of Oz, anything along those lines. The 3 films here are Ladies Should Listen, Wedding Present, and Big Brown Eyes. And with Kino Lorber kind of being a bit of a mini Criterion, there's some others like Olive Films that are out there that are providing these reissues. It's nice to see that, because not everything's going to garner a Criterion film release. With 2 of these films, Wedding Present and Big Brown Eyes, they co-star Joan Bennett. And for somebody like me who has been watching Dark Shadows on and on and on over the last few months, it's really entertaining seeing a younger version of her. They do have commentary tracks from film historians, which is awesome to see. And again, with these films, I never thought you would see them apart from possibly made on demand DVDs. So to see them treated with a bit more glamour, for lack of a better word, it is nice to see. And it's Kino Lorber, the license is from Universal. History with basically Universal owns the own Paramount films, so that's all you need to know. But Kino Lorber has tons of sales, so be on the lookout for that kind of stuff. And you look at the rest of their catalog, there might be something that you would be interested in sampling. And that's my wolf.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, let's wrap this one up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can listen to us through iTunes, through Stitcher Radio, and many of the other podcatching platforms. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to this channel. If you're watching us through the Facebook Live stream, thank you very much for tuning in. I know it was a little bit of a shift moving to Wednesday for this particular week. Very happy. Oh, we got somebody else. John Mock came on. So thank you, everybody who did tune in. Really appreciate that. And until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a wolf and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Wolf.